Welcome on into Nate Hit the Foul Pole. On today's podcast, we're going to preview Orioles Spring Training. We're going to do a little 26-man roster prediction for opening day, and we're going to finish up the pod with a Q&A. I'm your co-host, Matthew Pine, along with Zack Goodman. Zack, how are you doing today?
I'd be doing better if the Red Sox lost.
Yeah, I think the Twins played a Minnesota team as well.
Did they? Okay. Well, Detroit almost lost, and they came back and won the end. So
our beloved Orioles do not begin spring training play until tomorrow. It's on Saturday, February 22nd. So we'll be tuned in for that. You know, I don't think it's televised, but at least the one on Sunday is. So.
Well, the Braves are televising it, so if you can find a stream, then, or if you live in Atlanta.
Yes, streams are plenty these days. No issue there. So yeah, this is our first ever podcast. Zach, are you excited to get this whole project underway?
I'm amped, and I'm amped that baseball's back. Very excited.
Oh my god, baseball's back.
I know, it's great.
So let's get right into it. We're going to do a little bit of a spring training preview. Spring training already started, but the games have yet to begin. Where should we start, Zach?
Well, I think we got to start with the 26-man roster projection. So we're going to go through spring training here, and let's see who's going to come out of it. 26 men instead of 25 this year. So that's good news for maybe a Rule 5 pick like Brandon Bailey or Michael Rucker. So I think we should start with catchers. Who do you have making the team?
Well, I got a one Chance Cisco.
Me as well.
And I also have Mr. Pedro Severino.
6 catchers in camp. Brian Holiday, Adley Rutschman being 2 of them. Cisco and Severino being the others. Probably not going to make the team. It's pretty set in stone here that Severino and Cisco are going to be 2. And I don't think there's any chance any of them make the team. I know a lot of fans would love to see Adley make it, but he's definitely not going to. Maybe 2021, we'll see how that goes. But for now, Severino and Cisco, pretty locked down. Let's move on to first base. I have Chris Davis. I think a lot of fans are not going to be too happy to hear that. But it is what it is, and we still owe him a lot of money, around $93 million. So he's going to be on the team. He's taking pitchers deep in BP today. So, you know, maybe Chris Davis is on the comeback train. What do you think, Matt?
Well, no, I don't think he's on the comeback train. But it was an impressive showing today. I'll give him that. I don't really understand his approach in the offseason saying, well, I'm not going to change my swing, but I'm going to get jacked. And, no.
This has been infuriating.
It's definitely a strategy. I just don't think it's working out.
Definitely not the strategy. It's a strategy, but it's not the one you should be using. Really stubborn, as usual, I think, coming out of a year where he didn't even hit 200. He's coming out of a year where he didn't even hit 20 home runs. The guy basically needs to rework his entire swing, but refuses to do it because it's worked for him 4 years ago. It is what it is. I guess Davis is going to be on the team this year. He's probably going to be terrible. But last week he said that he's going to retire if he's bad this year, so I guess we're all kind of rooting for him to be bad now. Are you going to be rooting for him?
My dream scenario is that they have a settlement with him. You know, he says, well, I'm going to hang it up. And the Orioles are like, yeah, exactly. Do that. We're going to pay you, just not until year 2037.
Yeah, it can't be the Bobby Bonilla situation. It just can't. Davis just not. There's nothing left. There's no reason to pay him. It's kind of a mess situation. But we'll save that for another day. Trey Mancini also will be making the team, quite obviously. Best producer on the team. Probably going to put up huge numbers again this year. Maybe 40 home runs. You think he can get there?
Hey, man, it's possible if they keep using those juice balls.
Well, I know Elias said that he wants to let Trey use his power more. And I don't exactly think that's the greatest idea because Trey already hit 35 home runs last year. He's already a really good power hitter. If he's trying to air everything out, I don't know if that's the best idea. So, you know, Trey's good at what he does. He gets a lot of hits. The power comes and goes. You know, hit 291 last year. I don't think there's many reasons to make him use his power more, but I think Trey's going to put up huge numbers, play right field, play first base, maybe a little bit of left. Definitely a guy, a fan favorite. Definitely see a lot of him in spring training, so very excited for him this season. And at second base, the return of Hanser Alberto for his second season. What are you seeing from him this year?
Hashtag Fumulta. Yeah, I like Hanser a lot. I'm not as convinced as others that he's going to repeat what he did in 2019.
I agree.
I mean, if you look at his advanced numbers, I mean, he has the weakest contact rate, and not contact rate. He has the lowest exit velocity, I think, in the major leagues. It's in the 1 percentile.
He does not hit the ball hard, and he doesn't have any kind of power, and that immediately screams to me that pitchers are going to figure him out. Pitchers are going to start to realize what he does best and what he doesn't do best. They had a season to look at him, but now they have a whole season of tape, and they can say, all right, so he's not hitting the fastball very well off righties. Let's see what we can do to make this guy really struggle. And he probably will struggle a little bit more than he did last season. I'm not saying he's going to put up a Chris Davis batting line, but I don't think he'll be where he was last season.
Fair enough.
So we slide over to third base, and it's going to be, in all likeliness, Rio Ruiz. It's not...
We have our first discrepancy.
It's not something to get excited about, in my opinion at least. He's
not making my team, buddy.
He's not making your team. Really? Okay. Well, talk about why.
I'll tell you why. Because Richie Martin is starting to diversify his ability. And,
okay.
Rio's obviously a darling of the Elias regime because he originally drafted him in the same draft as Carlos Correa. But, Rio, he's got some stuff to work on. They sent him down to Norfolk last year, so he's no stranger to that. He still has 2 options left. So I see Richie Martin actually making the big league club over him.
And as a starter, or is Richie in a utility role?
Richie, as of right now, I'm going to put him as a starter right now.
Okay. Well, I actually had Richie as well, making the team, but in the utility role. I don't think Richie's best, for his long-term outlook, I don't think it's best to put him in the major leagues this year. I don't think that it's smart. But with now Richard Urania getting DFA'd this past week, I think it's probably smart that he's going to make the team, and he probably will put up numbers very similar to last year. But if he can move around the diamond a little bit, that'll be great.
Agreed.
So let's move over to shortstop, and I don't think there's much of a difference here in what we're going to say. Jose Iglesias is going to make the team as the starting shortstop, signed to a 1-year deal with a club option for 2021. I think a very exciting guy to have on the team, in my opinion. I'm very excited to see him. He's a wizard with the glove, can hit for contact, and even a little bit of power. He had his best hitting year last year, hit 288, so you don't know what he's going to do this year, but the guy can really play short. Definitely an upgrade offensively over the Richie Martin show that we had last year. Definitely a better player than a guy like Stevie Wilkerson or anybody else who starts at shortstop. So I'm very excited to see him.
Yeah, me too. Obviously Iglesias has a little bit of a history in Major League Baseball. He's been with several teams, but the one thing remains constant with every team. He's a defensive wizard at the shortstop position. He's going to help the young pitchers coming up, and I think that's really the biggest part of this that Elias and Sigma-Dell were looking at. They're thinking, we need to have a strong up-the-middle defense to help these young pitchers, not only with their confidence, but just help them get outs. And how many games did we watch last season where just so long of an inning, and the pitchers can't get anybody out? Well, maybe Jose Iglesias snags a few extra outs here and there, and it kind of speeds up the game a little bit.
It was too many innings last year. It was way too many innings. But yeah, another note that you said the Orioles defense last year was not good, and I mean they were bottom 10 in the league. They were pretty horrific a lot of days. There were some web gems throughout the season, but it was as an overall performance, not very good. So, it is what it is. Hopefully it gets better. Iglesias is replacing VR as kind of the up-the-middle guy that's going to play every day. And Iglesias is definitely a better defender than VR was. But I guess the signing of Iglesias kind of shows that Elias really wants to improve this defense and help his young pitchers out, like you said. So let's move to the outfield here. I have 4 guys making the outfield roster. And I have Trey Mancini, Austin Hayes, Anthony Santander, and Mason Williams, I think, is a guy Yeah, he's a minor league signing, but a guy who came up last September and showed that he can hit the ball and play a respectable outfield. He's not going to put up the numbers that Trey Mancini is, but he can be a better outfielder than Trey Mancini is. And I mean, he can play center field, so he can back up Hayes. He can play the corners as well. Solid arm, good defense. 2 years ago, we saw him with the Reds hit 293. Definitely a guy I can just see being that backup player who plays a lot, playing in the corners and center, and I think putting up pretty decent offensive numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty similar there. I don't have Mason. I have a soft spot in my heart for Mason Williams. You know, he's struggled through his demons throughout his career, and he's kind of been a little bit of a journeyman after being one of the Yankees' top prospects. But he's still in the organization. I think he'll be up at some point during the season. The only discrepancy I would actually slot in Dwight Smith, just to be that bench outfielder. I'm not ready to give up on Dwight Smith quite yet. Obviously, his numbers offensively weren't great last year, but I think it's still important to have somewhat of a veteran on that bench. So I think he makes the team.
Dwight Smith is a guy I do have as a good possibility to make the team. Again, I think the reason he doesn't is because his defensive numbers are some of the worst in Major League Baseball. He's absolutely terrible if you look at his metrics. Terrible sprint speed, doesn't do really anything well in the outfield. He's a noodle arm, but he can be that left-handed hitter who does have a lot of experience at the Major League level after playing a year and a half, basically. So Dwight Smith Jr., a guy I was really excited about last year, and put on a show in spring training, if you remember, but I don't really have him making the team. Mason Williams, in my opinion, is just a better player, a more refined player, and a guy who can play center field and back up Austin Hayes, which is really important, I think, for being that fourth outfielder.
Hey, man, you make valid points. I'm not going to argue with you there.
So, all right, so we do have our designated hitter, Renato Nunez, definitely going to be back, definitely going to hit a bunch of home runs again. Very excited to see what he does. And also, I think he's going to play a little more defense this year, so that'll be fun to watch. But he's not very good at defense, but it'll be fun to see if he's improved. But
man, can he hit baseball?
If he can hit 30 home runs, I'm perfectly happy with terrible defense. That's in my opinion, very important, is that he's our cleanup hitter, our 5-hitter, a guy who can just put up huge numbers. You know, I'm very excited to see what he does again. I was definitely on the Renato train early. Still on the train, so I'm very excited to see him.
So if you look at his advanced metrics, I mean, they're pretty good offensively. Exit velocities in the 67th percentile, hard hit rates in the 60th percentile, X slugging's in the 63rd percentile. So he's in the top half hitter-wise in many of the major categories. I think you'd like to see his on-base percentage a little higher, especially with a guy with so much power. But yeah, I mean, he hit 31 homers last year. He's probably gonna. He might not eclipse it, but he might reach that 30 home run mark, like you mentioned. But he's a solid DH, and I just kind of wonder what the plan is with him come the All-Star break when Ryan Mountcastle's in the big leagues, and he might not have a position to play at. So, keep an eye on Renato.
For utility players, that's a good point, but I think utility players are going to be a lot of fun too. I have Ramon Urias making the team, a guy we claimed off waivers from St. Louis. As you know, personal favorite of mine, a guy, really good on base skills, can play up the middle at both positions. He's not a fantastic shortstop, but very good at second base. He's just going to get on base. He walks a lot. He doesn't strike out a ton. I believe his strikeout rate last year was 19.4% in AAA. So he's a guy who's going to get on base, and he's going to be exciting to watch, and hopefully be a better fill-in than a guy like Stevie Wilkerson would be. And then, as I already mentioned, I do have Richie Martin making the team as well, but who were your utility picks this year?
So I got Urias as well, also the older brother of Luis Urias.
Right, exactly.
Big name prospect. I also have Andrew Velasquez making the club.
Really?
I think it was one of the beat reporters or club officials said that he's kind of like a better version of Stevie Wilkerson. A little bit, he's a versatile player. So I think he, especially if they're DFAing Richard Urania for him, for a guy like this. I think they have faith in him, and hopefully he has a good spring to solidify his case.
If he's better than Stevie Wilkerson, it's not saying a lot, but let's hope he is.
Yeah.
He can play all around. He's definitely a guy, a lot of utility options for him, so definitely a guy to look out for. I think a lot of his chances to make the team are going to be determined in spring, as is for most of these guys. But if he has a really good spring, I definitely think he has a big shot. But I would put Urias and Martin over him right now, as well as Rio Ruiz, who we talked about earlier. So let's move over.
Flip-flop Rio and Velasquez.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move over to the pitching side. I guess let's start with starters. So probably a 5-man rotation. The Orioles could do something weird and go a 6. Very unlikely. But we obviously have John Means. He's the ace. Take it for what it's worth. He's a good pitcher who's not great, and I think he'll put up solid numbers this year. I do think teams will start to figure him out because he is a 2-pitch pitcher. He throws a fastball and a changeup, and that slider's really not very good. So if he can really develop that slider into a nasty third pitch to put people away, then I think he'll have a better season than last season. But where he stands right now, I do think Means regresses a bit.
I mean, it's kind of hard to duplicate what he did last year. I mean, I think at the All-Star break he had a 2.50 ERA, so definitely regressed in the second half, but that's to be expected when you face some of these teams a few times. Good thing that goes on his side. I mean, he has a pretty low whip, 114 last year. But the thing that really strikes me about John Means is his hard hit rate is in the bottom 10th percentile. That means like people really don't barrel him up as much, and that's going to play year to year. I don't think he's going to duplicate the numbers that he did last year, but I think he's going to still, showcase that changeup a lot and still get some hitters off balance. So I look for continued success, just not quite to the level that he reached in 2019.
That is huge, I think, what you talked about with the hard hit percentage, because I think if his changeup and his fastball can play where he's really not getting barreled up, then maybe he will have that success, but I don't particularly see it happening as well as he did last year, like you mentioned. But I think Means he'll be fine. He'll be fine. It's a rebuild. This is what we have to expect. So I think everyone should be very excited to see Means this year. For my number 2, I have Alex Cobb. He's coming back. Huge deal for 4 years, so still owe him a lot of money. Just like Davis, he's not going anywhere. He's not going to get traded. There's no value there. So Cobb is back. Amazing split finger. If he can come back this year with that, fully healthy, and throw that for his third pitch and get people out, and that's really important. But I'm not sure what to make of Cobb because we haven't seen him in a really long time. And when we did see him back in April and May of last year, he was horrifically terrible. He was kind of injured. This is a bounce-back season for Cobb, but I'm very skeptical of what kind of numbers he'll put up.
I mean, I remember watching, was it 2018 when he one of the starts against the Cleveland Indians, and he totally dominated them on their home field. And it was I think it was in July or August, and I'm like, this is what we've been waiting for. It's taken this long. He was signed late. He's finally becoming the pitcher that he once was, and then obviously he got hit by the injury bug, and it wasn't the same, and he never could find consistency. And you know what? I think he's going to be okay this year. I don't think many Orioles fans have him on their radar, which is totally fine, and I think probably the way he likes it. But I think he's going to impress a few people this year, and hopefully he's on his normal regiment. He can just do a full spring training, and he's going to be fully healthy come April.
Yeah, I hope so. And there was video of him just absolutely gassing a pitch by Trey Mancini today. So, maybe the velo might be up a little bit. I haven't seen any reports on what he's throwing, but I think a healthy Alex Cobb definitely helps the Orioles. It's not a bad thing. I think a lot of people are going to make it out to be, but just because he's on a big money contract. But it's not a bad thing. It's just another veteran we can slot in. Probably be pretty decent this year. So moving on, we have Brandon Bailey. I have making the roster as a starter. Definitely a guy that's up in the air right now, and I think his status as to whether he makes the team as a starter or reliever will really be dependent on his performance in spring training. But if you look at a lot of his numbers last year, in Double-A Corpus Christi, he had 10 strikeouts per 9, 7 hits per 9, 4 walks per 9, so decent numbers there. Would like to see him get the walks down, but for a guy who's striking out 10, that's not terrible. A 3.3 ERA. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who is not going to blow you away, but I think he'll be able to pitch at this level pretty well. I think he can make it as a back-end rotation guy.
I mean, yes, I have him on my list. I don't know if you're doing it this way, but I wouldn't have him as a third starter per se, but I think he's, they're going to keep the Rule 5 guys at the bottom line.
Yes, I definitely
Rule 5 is in place for a reason. It's, trying to help these clubs that are, quote-unquote, tanking, quote-unquote, talent. What's the word I'm looking for? Lacking of talent.
Depleted.
There you go. That's a good word.
Yeah, that's definitely the reason for Rule 5. Definitely.
Yeah, so I think all the points you mentioned, I think he's making the club, along with a guy that we'll talk about in 2 or 3 minutes. But, I think he's got a pretty good shot, and this is his time to shine. He hasn't been in the big leagues yet, and we've seen guys come up before with the Orioles, and especially some of the pitchers that just kind of flopped. So it's going to be interesting to see if this is one that actually succeeds. One that comes to mind is like a TJ McFarland type dude.
Oh no! Don't get me started.
I'm getting you started. He was a guy, but he wasn't particularly good with the Orioles, but at least he stuck with them for a couple years, and he's had a few stints with some other teams. So if they can get something like that performance out of Bailey, I think fans might be disappointed, but I think that's kind of par for the course for a Rule 5 pitcher.
Yeah, I agree. He's, again, not a guy who's going to put up huge numbers this year, but a guy that's just going to be maybe good enough to stick around. Maybe a 5, maybe a 4. We'll see what he plays himself into. The next guy I have on my list is Asher Wojciechowski, a guy coming back, claimed him off waivers last year from Cleveland, pitched 17 games, I believe, so definitely a guy who has some experience with the Orioles. He was okay down the stretch, had one really good game where he threw a no-hitter into 7, but not a guy I'm predicting to have a great season. If his ERA is under 4.5, I'd be very surprised. Probably not going to be anything really special this year, so I don't know how much there is to look forward to there, but a guy who can at least eat innings, hopefully give you 5 or 6 a game if he's at his best. So not much to look forward to there.
Wojo is perhaps the most average pitcher of all time.
Yes, 100% agreed.
He's not good, he's not bad, he's just completely average. And I'll frame it this way. I think that's a really good thing for Orioles fans to look forward to.
Really? Yeah, okay.
Yes. I think league average for an Orioles starting rotation is just fine. I think you could have that on a 2012 playoff team, a 2014 playoff team. I think it's worked for them in the past. And for him kind of be that third or fourth starter, I feel like that's totally fine. He's gonna take his knocks early, but he's a guy that seems to be able to bounce back and seems to pitch well under pressure. So, I'm thinking that he's going to be just fine for the Orioles this season.
I love what you said about not having great starting rotations in the past and still winning games, and that is the Oriole way in the past basically 2 decades, just not having great starting pitching. We never have had great starting pitching. They've always just gotten by, and they've been good enough. Chris Tillman of the world, those kind of guys, just good enough. So definitely looking at Wojciechowski as a guy who's probably just going to be good enough to stick around. Probably won't get DFA'd this year. He'll probably pitch.
Can I just say something real fast?
Yeah.
I am proud that I knew how to spell his name on that one Sporkle quiz I took.
Yeah, I never know how to spell it. It's a long one.
You got to break it down like a phone number, like 3 letters at a time.
Right. Yeah, I just put Woj on my list here. I didn't even try. Not even gonna give it a shot. All right. And my final starter I have is a guy I have no reason why he's even on the team. No reason why we signed him to a major league deal, but Cole Stewart. His numbers are terrible. I don't know why he's here. A minor league deal for $500K would have been fine, but we didn't sign him to a minor league deal. We signed him to a major league deal for a lot more money. Not a guy I like at all. He hasn't had a single year of major league success. Really, his minor league numbers are not that impressive. Definitely not exciting there. But I think since we did sign him to a major league deal, it's almost for sure he's making the rotation. Probably is the last guy. I can't wait to see how many home runs Aaron Judge hits off him this year. It's going to be a lot. Not a great outlook for Cole Stewart.
Well, buddy, we have our second discrepancy.
Really? Okay.
Yep. I have Mr. Wade LeBlanc.
Okay.
Making the club. I think it's important that Brandon Hyde has another lefty in the rotation besides Means. I think that's going to be important to kind of anchor that rotation. LeBlanc's been around forever. The dude is 35 years old.
Yeah.
And if he makes a team, you're going to have three guys in their 30s in the 5-man rotation. So just talk about veteran presence for the young guys like Brandon Bailey, like John Means, some other, relievers. I think that's important. Not necessarily in terms of the rebuild, but I think it's important to kind of mentor those young guys, be that presence, and like I said, having another lefty, it's definitely a little bonus for him.
That's another reason that you just mentioned that signing Cole Stewart to a major league deal was completely confusing to me, is that he doesn't really have the veteran experience like a guy like Wade LeBlanc. So I don't know what he's here for. I hope he doesn't make the team. He probably will, in my opinion at least. I know you disagree. Maybe you have him in your bullpen. We'll get there in a sec. But no, you do not. Okay, so you have Cole Stewart getting cut. Do you think they're going to eat the money, though?
Eat it.
Okay. I mean, I wish we were we did that on more contracts we have on this team, but we won't get into that right now. But let's move over to the bullpen, and I have a 8-man bullpen. Sean Armstrong, Michael Givens, Richard Blyer, Michael Rucker, Paul Fry, Hunter Harvey, Miguel Castro, and David Hess making the bullpen.
A little heavy.
Yeah, so actually the guy I wanted to talk about a little bit. A lot of hype around David Hess this year. I don't know why. There's not really reason to have hype around David Hess because he's really, aside from the Blue Jays game last year where he had, I think, 6.5 no-hit innings, 6 1/3, I'm sorry, he just doesn't really do much for me. I wish him success. I wish him luck. I hope he's good for the Orioles' sake. I don't see it. But he did go to the academy that John Means went to try to rework his windup. So maybe he gets better this year. The release point I heard has changed a lot. So maybe something to look forward to. Maybe more than a guy like Wade LeBlanc. But it is what it is there. With Hess, I'm not sure he's going to put up a great season. A lot of people would disagree with me. A lot of people on Twitter are very excited about him. I won't mention any names.
Yeah, I think the only difference we have is I don't have Hess making the major league roster, and this one's going to probably throw you for a little curve. But I have Cody Carroll making the major league roster.
I'm going to say that's probably not going to happen. I could be completely wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I like Cody Carroll.
Well, I can explain myself. Cody Carroll barely pitched at all last year. I think the thing with him is, so he didn't pitch very much last year, but the thing is he's 27 years old. Like, he's not going to get much more development, especially at that age. He was in the Zack Britton deal, so you're going to want to start seeing those guys along with Dylan Tate kind of showcase a little bit. I know Elias seems to be a big fan of his, so I think if he can pitch through a full spring training healthy, get that velo back up to where it should be, I think he's got a pretty good shot just because, to me, he doesn't have anything left to show at the minor league level.
Yeah, I agree. He was kind of a guy who was very close to the majors coming over the Britton deal in the first place. Not much left to prove, like you said. Again, I think his spot on the team will be dependent on performance. Not really a veteran presence either, which kind of takes a little bit off his resume, but he's a guy that definitely throws hard, can blow guys away. Dylan Tate is another guy I would love to see make the major league roster, but I think he's a lot less likely than Cody Carroll. I definitely like to see Cody Carroll make it over a Cole Stewart type. So that's, I think, a guy we've been waiting for kind of a while. Didn't really pitch last year. So definitely exciting if he makes the roster, for sure.
Quickly, a couple of guys that I think are pretty much on the precipice for the Major League roster in the bullpen would be Evan Phillips, and somebody like a Cole Sulser, somebody like a Travis Lakins, and maybe Isaac Mattson, who came over in that Dylan Bundy trade. So, guys to watch out for in 2020.
Isaac Mattson is a guy I'd really like to see show out in spring training because he's very close to the majors, pitched in AAA last year. Definitely the most mature guy in the Dylan Bundy trade. I was not a fan of that trade at all. I didn't really think we got a lot of value, but Mattson is a guy who's actually kind of dominated AAA last year, so it would be nice to see him get at least a cup of coffee at the end of the year, something like that, to see what we have in him, for sure. For the last couple minutes here, I just want to talk about who I have possibly making the roster, and a guy I really want to talk about is Ryan Mountcastle, because lots of hype around Ryan Mountcastle, been in this organization for 5 years, still hasn't made his Major League debut. Definitely going to this season, barring no injury.
He's young. He's still young.
He is still young, but there is a growing desire for me to see him in the Major Leagues soon. I know that we don't want to waste his service time, but he's definitely a guy I think he has to come up at some point soon. So looking forward to him. I don't think he makes the team out of spring training, even if he hits 400, but definitely going to be a big producer this year, a dark horse candidate for Rookie of the Year. Outside of my guy Austin Hayes, who I think will win AL Rookie of the Year. Just going to put that out there.
Are you a fan of Austin Hayes?
I am a massive fan of Austin Hayes. Definitely.
Okay,
definitely.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
All right, so a couple more things I want to talk about here. Is there a breakout player you see in spring training that we don't really hear much about now, but he's going to come flashing onto the scene this year?
He was at one point in time, just about a year and a half ago, he was the prince who was promised, if you will. He was supposed to be the heir apparent to Adam Jones in center field. That would be the one, the only Cedric Mullins. This offseason, he not only played cornhole with yourself and myself, but he revamped his swing. He's got some of the best sprint speed, some of the best glove play defensively out of any player in minor league baseball. And, I'm looking to see if that swing really was revamped, because if it was and he shows it in spring training, I mean, he might not make the big club initially, but he's going to be up pretty quickly if he can show consistency.
Definitely. I mean, he's kind of a sad story. Went down to AAA, didn't hit there, and then went to AA last year. I mean, didn't even bat 200 in the majors. A guy I really want to see succeed. A guy I've loved for a long time in the Orioles organization. I think he's poised for a good spring training as well. The swing is revamped, so I'm excited to see what he's got. And I would like to see him bulk up a little bit, because I know his throwing arm is, I would say it's well below average. So something maybe we could improve on there, but a lot of range in the outfield. Definitely a dark horse candidate to make the team, and a breakout player for sure. So let's move on here to our Twitter fan questions. We tweeted out. If anyone wants to ask us some questions, just tweet them at us. So
you can tweet us at FoulPollPod, and you know what? Give us a follow too. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. So our first question here came from @PumaRevived. He said, which of the younglings will have the best production, depending on how you view it? Also, what pitcher will break out? For the younglings, I definitely am thinking Austin Hayes. I just said about 2 minutes ago, I'm a huge fan. He's going to be the starter in center field. I almost no matter how bad he does. He's probably going to do really well, in my opinion. I think he has the potential to hit 20 home runs this year at least, maybe 25. Play a competent center field, great arm, a lot of range. Definitely a guy I'm really excited for. Yeah, can rob home runs, as Matt is looking at me and making that known. So definitely a guy we're very excited to see. I think a ray of light in the Orioles organization this year will definitely be Austin Hayes. I think he'll put up Rookie of the Year numbers, and he could finish top 3 easily.
Yeah, I'm going to take Ryan Mountcastle for this. I think he's I've seen him several publications listed as the Rookie of the Year favorite in the American League. I mean, I guess that remains to be seen, depending if Casey Mize gets promoted. I've heard rumblings of Wander Franco later in the year, but I think if he starts with the team at some point in April, I think he's going to get enough at bats and enough of production that he'll be in the conversation at the very least. Now, would I like to see him improve those walk numbers, decrease strikeouts? Absolutely, but he'd be my guy that I think fans especially are really looking to see if he succeeds.
There definitely is cause for concern with his walk to strikeout ratio for sure. It's not great, but he's definitely going to hit. I think we all know that. He's going to hit a lot of home runs. Definitely going to get on base. I think he has the bat of a Trey Mancini kind of type. Definitely going to put up big numbers. So Mountcastle definitely could have great production this year if he comes up mid-April, maybe May. So we'll move on to the next part of the question. He said, which pitcher will break out? For a breakout guy, we talked about him before, but Brandon Bailey, I think, is the breakout guy for this year. A guy who can really solidify himself as a rotation piece and can put up a solid season.
Give me Hunter Harvey, the real-life Kenny Powers. I think he's not only going to become a household name in Baltimore, I think he's going to become a household name in the major leagues, much like a Trey Mancini is when you think Baltimore Orioles nowadays.
20 saves?
Yeah, man. I think if they trade Givens, I think he might be a starter out of spring training. Who knows? But the guy's got a head of lettuce, unlike anybody in baseball, and he's gonna gain some notoriety. Just you wait.
I definitely agree with you there. I think he's really good. Our next question came from @Roar44, and he said, which Oriole will have the highest WAR at the end of the season? Yeah. Last year, it was John Means. This year, I'm definitely thinking Trey Mancini has got to be the guy you got to go with. I mean, a lot of home runs, huge numbers he's going to put up offensively. He's definitely got to be the guy. I think who can put up a 3 to 4 WAR, maybe more. Yeah,
I mean, last year he had a 3.3 WAR, and offensively he had a 4.1. So he was really, he took a step back with his defense, and that kind of hurt him. I think, you're not going to see too many guys improve upon that mark. I think John Means has a chance, but I believe Jonathan VR was the leader last year, so it's hard to see anybody really usurp that with the offensive and defensive ability. So, yeah, I'm in agreement there.
If Trey can just stop sliding into the wall and injuring his knee, we'll be good to go defensively. Hopefully, improve that WAR a little bit. So we're going to move on to @Marcus_E. He said, if Chris Davis played for the Astros last year, would his batting average have stayed the same or been worse? So, cheating doesn't help a guy who really can't hit the ball in the first place. He really can't make contact. Not much else to say there. I don't
hear you.
I don't think there's much way that Chris Davis, knowing that a fastball is going to come, helps Chris Davis hit the fastball. He really isn't that kind of player. So, not at this point in his career, at least. So, I would say it would have stayed the same.
Whew. Now, if there's one thing Chris Davis loves, it's hitting dingers. Unfortunately, you got to lift the bat off your shoulder there, Chris, to do that. Man, you can't tell me he wouldn't have gotten one pitch that he would have knew it was coming, launched it 450 feet. Okay, you're right. Actually, yeah, he probably would have been the same.
So the next question came from @JamesMurray, and he said,
hey, James.
He said, should the Orioles be prepared to sign Adley Rutschman to an extension similar to the White Sox when they signed Luis Robert? And the answer is definitely yes, in my opinion at least, because the last superstar we had here in Baltimore, Manny Machado, obviously never got an extension. We lost him. And the return is still to be seen as to whether that was good. But definitely, I think the earliest you can, signing a guy to a multi-year extension is huge. I don't really care how much money we give him. Usually, I think Robert got in the area of $100 million. That could be a little bit more, but definitely something I want to do with Rutschman early on. And I think maybe even a guy like Austin Hayes could deserve a extension this year if he puts up good numbers. Ryan Mountcastle. It's important to lock these guys up early because you don't want to be having to trade them 6 years down the road like we did with Machado. That just can't happen again.
See, I think you make a good point, but I'm also in the camp that I don't think Rutschman would do that. I mean, if you're in his position, why would you not hit an open market or at least get some of your full value? And I think if he's going to look at somebody, it's going to be a JT Realmuto and try to at least match that contract. I just don't see it happening in the near future. I think you raise a good point with Austin Hayes, because Austin Hayes has been injury-riddled his entire career. So he has literally no guarantee that he's ever going to make a huge contract in baseball. I mean, when he plays and he's fully healthy, he's great, but it's few and far between. I want him to stay completely healthy, but I think for him, it makes a lot more sense than it does for Adley.
Yeah, it's definitely something that Adley probably wouldn't agree to. I'm not sure why Luis Robert did in the first place. It's also kind of interesting to see a team sign a guy before he's even looked at a major league pitch. That is kind of odd in the White Sox case.
So it works out for certain teams and other teams it doesn't. Like, it worked out for the Astros with Jonathan Singleton. It's working out right now for the Braves with Acuna and Ozzie Albies.
Absolutely, yes.
But there's going to be players every once in a while where you pay them big money and they don't perform. So it's a risk on both sides. But I usually tend to say that the player does not benefit as much. But hey, I'm never going to see that much money in my lifetime. So hey, go for it.
Never too late to follow your dreams, Matt. But you could get that contract like Adley. Start working now.
Thanks, buddy.
Our next question came from @Ryan Zepp. He said, do you think at any point this year casual fans will find any semblance of hope as far as the actual play in the field is concerned? I think that goes back to what we said before with Austin Hayes, Ryan Mountcastle, the young players coming up, Dean Kramer maybe later in the year, Keegan Aiken as well. That is the hope that you'll see, the bright young stars coming up and actually producing, as opposed to guys like Chris Davis striking out. It's a lot more fun to watch the young guys come up and play. So, if you don't appreciate that as a fan, you're probably not going to enjoy baseball too much. But that's definitely what I think we should be looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, all good points for sure. I'm sure we're going to talk about this on a future podcast, but them closing some of the upper deck sections, it's kind of a red flag. So I think it's important to look at all the positive notes for Orioles fans this year, and there are plenty. I mean, there's some prospects that we've been waiting on for a while, and they're going to make their debuts, and we're going to get Kumar Rocker, so that's good too.
Hey,
I think there's some good things.
Tigers won today, so if that's any indication of how their season's going to go, looks like we've got Kumar locked up in 2021.
Over. Call it.
Our next question came from @cousin_Smith. He said, who will win the Cy Young first, Grayson Rodriguez or DL Hall? If there was a neither option, I would pick it.
What? Out of here.
It's a Cy Young is one pitcher a year from the AL, so it's hard. I think they'll both be really good. I'm looking forward to both of them. If I had to pick, I would say DL Hall, because I do really like his slider, good stuff. He's a lefty, a really good deception, a really good windup. We got a taste of him in the Futures game last year. He looks really good. But Grayson Rodriguez, definitely a great prospect too. Both the guys will come up and hopefully be both number one starters. It'd be nice. But as to who will win a Cy Young first, I think that DL Hall has the better chance.
I think DL Hall has the better chance because he has the better stuff. Gray Rod has a little bit more control. And I'm going to go with my man's Gray Rod. I met him at one of the Birdland Caravan events, and that dude is massive for being only 19 years old. And I've never seen a kid that age with that much poise. So if any of that poise in person translates on the mound, watch out, MLB.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be a star, for sure. Both of them are.
Looks like we have one final question there, Zach. Comes from a friend of mine, Mr. Jake Luke, Cool Hand Luke. You can follow him at Jake Luke, LOUQUE. All right, that's enough of the love fest. His question comes in: what is the best Ravens podcast on the planet? I think I have the answer for you. That would be the Baltimore Beatdown podcast, hosted by one Jake Luke and one Spencer Schultz.
I would definitely agree. Great podcast. Give it a listen.
All right, I believe that concludes our episode. Did you have anything else there, Zach, before we head out of here?
That's pretty much it, but definitely come back next week. Another podcast up talking about a whole different topic. So spring training tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Hopefully we start winning some games and Grapefruit League champions. You never know.
You can subscribe to our podcast. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on Spotify. And we're on SoundCloud. So you just want to mash that follow button at FoulPollPod. You can find us on Twitter. Tweet us some Q&A questions. We'll probably post that up in the coming days. And, make sure you follow us there. And thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.